Welcome to RECO12. I'm Justin. I'm your host and a grateful child of an all-powerful and all-loving God and an addict living in the miracle of recovery. RECO12 is all about exploring the common threads of addictions of all kinds and sharing tools and hope from people on this similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and places to learn and support one another. Our speakers represent various fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, reflecting the richness of our shared experiences. Join us in this journey of recovery and unity. Today's speaker for the 229th meeting, excited about the numbers that just keep coming along, is Ashley S., who spoke to us just a little bit over a year ago in meeting number 150 on the topic of an earnest seeker. And today I'm excited to hear her experience, strength, and hope as she speaks on the topic of drop the rocks. Excited to get to that. We'll get to her talk here in the Q&A in just a minute, but first for a little bit of business. RECO12 has several recovery resources in our family of podcasts and social media communities. To learn more, listen more, connect more, or just hang out and learn and grow with us, you can check out the other podcast, Noodle It Out with Nikki M., which releases every Tuesday, Big Book Roundtable, which releases every Thursday. And Ashley, by the way, was part of that as we got that launched. And I'm grateful to see her doing amazing things in her life right now and her recovery right now also. And to learn more about each of these podcasts, you can go to RECO12.com and check them out. You can look them up in your podcast platforms anywhere by searching them out. Things are just moving along. We've got several other projects coming along in RECO12. Speaking of that, those projects do take a little bit of financial support to keep up and going. RECO12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue our mission. Thank you this last week to Anne, Lo, Katrina, Ashley, and John for becoming spearheads and supporting the RECO12 cause. If you would like to also support RECO12 and become a spearhead, visit www.reco12.com/support for one-time or monthly options. Your support makes a difference in sharing our message of recovery. Each week, we look forward to receiving the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I'm going to introduce our guest speaker for today, Ashley S., and just give a little background information on her. Ashley S. is from North Carolina, and she is grateful to be a recovered sex addict and codependent. She has a deep love for the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, as it is the primary text that enabled her to enter upon a new relationship with her Creator and have a profound spiritual awakening to overcome her sex addiction back in 2021. However, Ashley found herself hopeless once more as she was stuck in a toxic relationship in sobriety. By the grace of God, she entered into the rooms of Al-Anon back in March of 2023 and found a sponsor to take her back through the Big Book to heal from her codependency. Ashley's talk today is based on steps 6 and 7 and another spiritual text which had a profound impact on her recovery journey, Drop the Rock. Today, she is passionate about carrying the message to the addict who still suffers, and she found it was the solution to help her drop her rocks. Ashley is grateful to be back on RECO12, and we're grateful to have you back 1 year later after reworking the 12 steps to share her new story. Take it away, Ashley. The floor is yours.
There we go. Thank you so much, Justin. All right. Well, I am so grateful to be back today. As Justin said, my name is Ashley S. I'm from North Carolina. I am a recovered sex addict and codependent with a sobriety date of November 2nd of 2021. By the grace of God, I have been through the steps as they are outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous with two very kind and patient Big Book Step Study sponsors. And I practice steps 10, 11, and 12 every day to the best of my ability. And I want to just put out a disclaimer before I do any shares that, this is my experience. This is my story. If there's something that differs from what you've been through or learned, please consult with your sponsor. I'm just sharing what has happened to me through the grace of God in my life. So I want to talk about, what my life used to be like briefly, what's happened since I've been in the rooms over the past 3 years, and most importantly, what is my life like today? So very briefly, as Justin mentioned, I'm a sex addict. So what got me into the rooms in the first place was I got fired from my job for acting out. And my husband found out at the time, my husband found out that I had had an affair. And all of that happened on the very same day. And this was back in July of 2021. And so thank God there was a therapist that suggested I check out Sex Addicts Anonymous. And from there, I knew that I had found my place. This is exactly what I was looking for. For the first time, I was among people who shared the same problem with me, who were wanting to get help. And I'm just so grateful that I am an addict. I was actually talking about that recently with somebody. Why am I grateful that I'm an addict? Because I have a better relationship with God today, or I have a God of my own understanding today that I did not have before. And so I struggled, as I think a lot of us do when we first get into the rooms, um, trying to go to meetings, trying to do everything that people tell us to do, make 10 phone calls a day, check in with your sponsor, all the checklist of things to do. And it just, none of those things were really holding or sticking with me. I had very white knuckled sobriety. And it wasn't until November of 2021 that somebody turned me on to the big book. And as I could say, the rest is history. But the big book, like Justin mentioned in my intro, I have a deep, profound love for because that is what helped me to have a spiritual awakening. And in my last share a year ago on RECO12, I talked a lot about the big book, but this year I wanted to change things up and focus my primary text a little bit differently on a book called Drop the Rock. And a lot of you might not be familiar with this book, but it's about step 6 and 7 by Bill P., Todd W., and Sarah S. And so if I may, I'd like to read just the introduction with you for those who aren't familiar with step 6 and 7 or this book. So it says, seems there was this group of 12-step members taking a boat ride to this island called Serenity. And it was truly a happy bunch of people. As the boat pulled away from the dock, a few on board noticed, it says Mary. The character's name is Mary, but I was always taught, cross off the name and put your name so that you're really relating to this. So Ashley, running down the street trying to catch up with the boat. One member said, darn, she's missed the boat. Another said, maybe not. Come on, Ashley, jump in the water, swim, swim. You can make it. You can catch up with us. So Ashley jumped into the water and started to swim for all she was worth. She swam for quite a while and then started to sink. The members on board, I would call that my sponsor, my sisters in recovery, all of you that are in the rooms today. Now all aware that Ashley was struggling, shouted, come on, Ashley, don't give up. Drop the rock. And for me, I could just cross out the word rock and replace it with the guy, whoever I was in a relationship with at the time. With that encouragement, Ashley started swimming again, only to start sinking again shortly afterward. She was going under when she heard all those voices shouting to her, Ashley, drop the rock, let go, and drop the rock. Ashley was vaguely aware of something around her neck. And I knew that the crux of my problem was attention, needing attention or validation from others. But she couldn't quite figure out what it was. Once more, she gathered her strength and started swimming. She was doing quite well, even gaining a little on the boat. But then she felt this heaviness pulling her under again. She saw all those people on the boat holding out their hands and hollering for her to keep swimming and shouting, don't be an idiot, Ashley, drop the rock. Then she understood when she was going down for the third time, this thing around her neck. This is why she kept sinking. And as the big book describes it on page 63, I would call that the bondage of self. On page 62, self, it's the root of our troubles. When she really wanted to catch the boat. And so that to me is the definition of hopeless. You're wanting to stop, but you cannot. And that was what my experience was at the time. I was in a relationship with someone who was unavailable, and I wanted to leave, and I couldn't leave, or I would leave, and I couldn't stay out of the relationship. I kept getting back into it. So this thing was the rock that they were all shouting about. Resentments, fear, dishonesty, self-pity, intolerance, and anger were just some of the things her rock was made of. And so I do want to briefly read what I wrote down as part of my 5th step, because these are my rocks. These are my top 10 rocks that I have. Fear of rejection and judgment, avoidance, pride in reverse, being a doormat, not voicing my needs, being expectant of people, controlling and manipulating, needing others' attention, carrying others' guilt, perfectionism, people pleasing, and enabling. All good things of a codependent and love addict or sex addict. God, help me get rid of the rock, she prayed, now. Get rid of it. And so there was something that my sponsor told me at the time that, things show up in our lives to poke holes in our program. And that's exactly what was happening with me, with the relationships that I was getting in sobriety. I learned that men are a luxury. They are not a necessity. But I was living as though that they were a necessity. So I'm going to read just a little bit more and then kind of get into some of the weeds here. But Ashley's managed to stay afloat long enough to entangle a few of the strings, holding that rock around her neck, realizing as she did that her load was easing up. Then with another burst of energy, she let go. And I think that's really important for me to talk about in my share today is how. How did she let go? How did I let go? Because I think that's the hardest part for most of us sometimes. She tore the other strings off and dropped the rock. Once free of the rock, she was amazed how easy it was to swim. And soon she caught up with the boat. And I would replace the word boat with freedom, or as the big book describes it on page 66, the sunlight of the spirit. Those on board were cheering for her and applauding and telling her how great she was, how it was so good having her with them again, and how now they could get on with a boat ride and have a nice time. And I feel like this is where a lot of people that I see or in my lineage have stopped. They don't work all 12 steps and carry the message to others. But we read the last paragraph here. It says, Ashley felt great and was just about to indulge in a little rest and relaxation when she glanced back to shore. There, a ways back, she thought she saw something bobbing in the water, so she pointed it out to some others. Sure enough, someone was trying to catch the boat, swimming for dear life, but not making much headway. In fact, it looked like the person was going under. Ashley looked around and saw the concern on the faces of the other members. She was the first to lean over the rail and shout, "Hey, friend. Hey, Justin. Hey, everybody else that I see on this meeting today. Drop the rock." And so that was one of the miracles and beautiful promises that was fulfilled as part of me doing this work is that I now know my true purpose in life. It is to fit myself to be of maximum service to others. And so that's what I try and do every single day to the best of my ability is to just help one person. But my talk and this book is focused on steps 6 and 7. And for anyone who's not familiar with what those steps are, I know there's at least one person in the room today that has never heard the 12 steps. So I would like to read them. Is that step 6 is we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And step 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. And so when I was reading, I mentioned, talking about how exactly did I drop my rock? How did I get out of this toxic relationship? How did I stay out of the toxic relationships? And as the book talks about, the first and foremost thing is that I asked God to help me be willing to let it go, to let the person go just for today. And I did that every single day, to not text or call him. And I think by being willing, I became willing or became entirely ready, doing that process every single day. Other things that I did were thanking God. I found that some of my best prayers now are when I thank God for what I have so I can focus on the good rather than what I'm losing. Because I'm sure a lot of addicts know when you're in that headspace where it feels like you're losing everything, you're losing that person or your drug of choice, it feels pretty hopeless. So focus on the good things. I started really cracking down on my 10 steps with my sponsor, and I can briefly cover that, but it describes it in more detail on page 88 or 84 of the big book. um, to spot the thought that comes up, to ask God to remove it, to discuss it with someone immediately, um, to make amends if we've done any harm, and to think of how we can help others. And so I really started cracking down on those 10 steps, all of the thoughts that were coming into my head at the time. Um, Something that I kind of slacked off on doing, I would write a nightly review, as the big book describes in step 11. I would write that review every single night, but I wouldn't send it off to my sponsor. And so I started picking that back up again for that extra level of accountability. Um, and one of the blessings that I got from getting into Al Anon is I found a new sponsor, a woman that I could work with every single day and start reading again every single day, which is what I really needed. And so that was so important to me to have that time to set aside each day to grow or to focus on my spiritual growth. And as we got into step 4 in writing inventory, I at least wrote one name a day. I can't specify how important that was to me. That I've done it both ways, where I've wanted to focus and just have all these hours of the day just to write, but it never seems to happen. So if I can just write at least one name a day, I will chop down that tree. Um, Other things that came up that were new to me was two-way prayer. My sponsor had introduced me. I actually have another book here on my shelf. For anyone who's never heard of this book or read it, it is called How to Listen to God. It's by Wally P. And it talks about two-way prayer. And I started doing that every single morning, where I would spend 10, 15 minutes in prayer and meditation, writing down the things that I would label this as God's voice, but hearing the thoughts from God, and then holding those up to the four absolutes. And I'm a member of All Addicts Anonymous, and so we use the 10 points and the four absolutes. So honesty, love, selflessness, purity, and to compare what you've written down to those four absolutes to see, is it self or is it God's will? So that also really started to help me on my journey. I continued to do my own personal studies. I started going to 4 book studies a week. On Monday nights, we would read the big book. On Tuesday nights, we were reading Drop the Rock, the book I just mentioned, How to Listen to God, and Spirituality of Imperfection. And so I was really seeking, as Justin mentioned. My title of my last share a year ago was an earnest seeker. So when I am really willing to go to any lengths, I seek out, the fellowship that I crave. So I'm really blessed that God put those the women and the book studies in my path to help me. But the most important thing that, like I read with the story about Mary, is that when she was released from that bondage from the rock, is that she didn't just stop there. She went and she tried to help the next person. And that, to me, was the biggest thing that helped me, is I consistently tried to read with one of my sponsees every single day to the best of my ability. And that is what helped me to get out of myself, to get out of that narrative, that story that was going on in my head, being, out of the relationship with a guy. That helped me. And I threw myself into the women that I worked with. And I also, just to wrap up here, I also threw myself into my church. Getting to know others, joining a small group so that I could share my story there and people could get to know me and I could get to know them. Doing fun things like going to game nights and our picnics and retreats, or volunteering to help out. Again, there was a lot of things that were selfless service. But if I had to summarize all of those things together, it was prayer and action. That is how I let it go. That's how I dropped the rock. So I think it's really easier. We hear that term a lot in the meetings, is prayer and action. But what does that actually look like? So I hope some of those examples really help to show you what helped me, and I hope that they can help you. So like I said, at the end of all of those things, I found that I became entirely ready to have God remove all the defects of character that were blocking me. And at that point, I had no issues with saying things like, don't ever contact me again, or blocking and deleting a phone number, really standing up for myself and not falling back into that temptation of loneliness or craving attention. Because what I found during this process was that I got genuine connection and fellowship, and I didn't need my drug of choice or, the guy or the rock. And so I want to spend some time talking about, what my life is like today. These are by no means an all inclusive list of promises or what the sunlight of the Spirit looks like for me today, but these are some of the things that have happened just over the past year of being in Al Anon. So emotionally, I I feel like I'm at total peace 24/7. I genuinely want to help others, um, and have a joy for doing so. I feel totally light. I'm not holding on to any secrets, which is just an absolute joy. Like Bill describes it, like a great clean wind at the top of a mountain blew through and through. That line really resonates with me. So emotionally and mentally, my health is better than it's ever been. But physically, I I had gained 18 pounds being in that last relationship that was toxic, and I was able to lose the weight and start really taking care of me again, getting proper sleep, eating, working out, all those things. I feel like those are huge for addicts, or at least for me. That's one of the first things to go. It's my self care. Um, and financially, that was a huge miracle that happened over the course of my journey. I never thought that I'd be able to say that I am debt free, but that was one of the blessings that God helped me through, to finally stop overspending, to take a real hard look at one of those rocks that I was holding on to of not managing my finances well. Um, I was able to also start my own business, something I never thought I'd be able to do, to bring in some additional income to help support myself. And last with the financial aspect is I'm a contractor. I work in project management, and I found out my contract was ending, due to budget, and God gave me a job in 3 days. I got a new contract in 3 days. And so I'm actually starting that job on Monday, which I'm super excited about. And that's just such a huge blessing. That one of the lessons, like I said, with, all of the different ways of prayer and action for me, is that it enabled me to trust God even more every time, because I kept, putting more faith in, and I was getting more blessings out, so to speak. So I knew, like, when knew that my contract was coming to an end, I didn't know how God was going to take care of it. I just trusted that it was going to happen, and it did. Um, and then spiritually, what my life looks like today, I found the most amazing church that aligns with my values now and what I was looking for. I grew up Baptist. I went to church every single Sunday with my parents sitting on the second row. But it wasn't until going through this process the first time, and studying We Agnostics in the big book, that I learned I was agnostic. And I never wanted to go to church, but now I do. I absolutely love my church. Um, that was such a huge blessing, and to give me the fellowship that I craved. And through this process, I was also able to complete all of my amends. That is so freeing to be able to say that I have no more amends to make, and I don't plan on causing more harm, to have more amends to make. So it was really a blessing to be able to go back and face some of the people that I hadn't quite crossed off yet, and try at least be willing to make those amends. Um, I'm checking on my time here. I know I've got a couple more minutes. One of the last things that I think was really fulfilling for me is that there is a group in Bali, Indonesia, that I was able to help form like a new group with, and just to see, like the big book says, having a host of new friends in this fellowship that you build all because of God, and helping others. It's wonderful to watch, not just my recovery, but others' recovery, to see the light in them, their families, and just the opposite ripple effect that you have in recovery. It's so beautiful. Um, and then last but not least, I'm finally able to say that I'm in a very healthy, non-codependent relationship for the first time in my life. And I'm experiencing, like the book says, a finer intimacy than ever before. And that is such a blessing to when there's problems or issues, I can speak up about how I actually feel. And I don't have that fear of abandonment that, he's going to break up with me or leave, or get angry at me and retaliate. I love that we're able to serve others together, to be able to experience, the rooms and church and all of that together. And we encourage each other to grow. We point out, lovingly point out things that, are little pebbles or rocks that we still might be holding on to. And so that really means a lot to me that God also blessed me with someone who came into my life right when I needed him. So, um, if you have not done this work as it's laid out in the book, with a big book step study sponsor, I really encourage you to seek someone out who is willing and available. I also am available right now to take at least one person through the work. So Justin's got my information. Please reach out if you are interested in doing this work. I know we're going to have about 25 minutes here for Q&A, so please feel free to ask questions. But again, I'm just so grateful to be able to share. And I'll pass it back over to you, Justin.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I really appreciate it. Man, good stuff. And it's good to catch up with you again, hear a little bit more about what's been going on in your life over the last year. Very exciting stuff. I've written down several questions. We've gotten a couple questions in from the live audience. And reminder to our live audience, if you have a question, just put it in the chat. We'll get to it as we go along. I will be moderating those questions, so just type them in the chat. And let's see. I want to start off with one thing. So at the very beginning, you talked about, as you were reading the introduction, you talked about a list of like your top 10 rocks. And I want to hit on one of those that really screams at me often in my own life, and one that really comes out in a lot of the people I work with, that I sponsor through the steps. And that's the rock of perfectionism. Ashley, tell us about the process of dropping that rock of perfectionism. Is it as easy as cutting the string and just letting it go, or what does that look like to you in your daily life? Oh, yeah, hang on just a second. Sorry. There you go.
Sorry, I mute myself when I'm not talking, so I need to figure that out. But oh, geez, Justin, why did you have to pick perfectionism out of all the 10? No, that's
because it's the one that kills me.
that's the one that's still showing up now. Yeah, as my boyfriend, he's probably laughing right now. I think he's on this meeting. As that's the one I'm still trying to grow. It's really pausing for me and recognizing the story that's in my head, that I have expectations about how I should be and the things should be around me, according to my standards. And I'm having to learn that, there are other ways of doing things. Take, for instance, how a hand towel is folded. I think a lot of us can relate to this, so I'm going to pick it out. But, I fold things in thirds, he folds things in half, and I just have to be, willing to accept that we have different styles and let it go. So I don't know. I will say I do pray about certain things, to help God to let that need to control, because that's what it is. Let that need to control pass, and it will. So.
Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, those hand towels, or the way the dishwasher's loaded, or whatever it may be. Yeah, those types of small things that just can really irritate. Good. All right, we've got several questions from the live audience. I'll start here with the top one. Anna says, "That's really great that you have found a church that works for you. Did you let go of your anonymity at church, and do you talk about 12-step there in church?"
That is a great question. Thank you for that question. So one of the reasons that I love my church so much is that we have our preacher or pastor share a message, but after the message, we have for about 20 minutes or so what are you thinking? And so the congregation actually goes around and shares what they thought or what's coming up to them after the message. And it reminds me very much of a 12-step meeting. And so in that meeting, or sorry, in that format, a lot of people have come forward, and I've actually learned that they were part of a 12-step fellowship because of certain things that they have shared, like writing inventory or doing a 10-step. And so I don't, identify myself as an addict in that setting or that I'm part of Al-Anon or anything like that, but I do share certain things like we've talked about doing a daily exam. So I share, this is what I've done with step 11. Um, and then the life story groups, that's what we call them, where we have an intimate group of about 3 to 5 people. We go around once a week and we share our story for about a couple of hours. In that format, I will, talk about briefly, my addiction and what my life looked like and what my life is like today. So it does give me that opportunity to help others. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, it's good stuff. We one of the phrases from the big book is we see where religious people are right. And I think that's something that you talked about. You grew up in church. You were there every week. Same here, same here. And it wasn't until very similar story I read We Agnostics and kind of added a word in there for those who are agnostic, atheist, and I said, or religionists. This type of change can really be hard. And I had to reset my entire foundation as to how that looked in my life. And miracles happen from that. So are there any other ways that you see where religious people are right and apply that?
I promise I'm not going to beat myself again. It's muscle memory habit. Um, ways that I try, the question was ways that I try and see where religious people are right. Um,
Right, right.
for me, if I hear something and it it has a certain resonance with me, and I know that there's something that it relates to in the book, yes, I will absolutely kind of pick things that I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but I pick and choose, I guess, certain things. So, for instance, actually, my aunt sent me this PDF without asking her for it. But my aunt sent me this PDF about Christianity and all of the other religions that are out there, and how Christianity is right and basically everything else is wrong. And so I don't agree with her or with that PDF, but I can at least respect her opinion and just say thank you and, continue to believe the things that I want to believe. So I think it
Thank
always comes down to love and tolerance of others is our code.
is our code. Love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Ashley. All right, another question from our live audience. This is from Jeffrey. Jeffrey says, Ashley, do you have an equation or process that you do prior to going to your God, prior to asking your God for the willingness to be willing in step 6, and prior to going to your God in step 7? What does that entirely ready look like to you?
To answer the first question that I heard, do I have a process for going to God? Yes and no. I don't think that there has to be a lot of formality with going to God. Again, this is my conception. I believe that God is love. And so there's not certain things that I have to do in order to receive that unconditional love. Um, but formality wise, yes, I do pray every single morning. I keep that time of prayer and meditation in morning at night to do my nightly reviews as things occur during my day. I'm doing a 10th step on them. So that's why I answered yes and no, because I do think there are certain things that are required of us, like the big book describes, in order to maintain our sobriety and to help others. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you very much. And if anybody else has any questions, please post them in the chat. Um, we do have a few people who have said, yeah, I'd like to contact Ashley. And I just want to say to them, if you will send me an email at RECO12pod@gmail.com, I will facilitate that connection so that her contact information isn't posted publicly in any way, shape, or form. And we'll get you lined up so that you can contact her and have those conversations. I'll put that email address in the chat as well as in the show notes. Um, Next question that I have for you is you just mentioned, one of the ways that you connect with God is with your nightly review as you look through that. Talk to me about the importance of doing that every night. You said that previously you had stopped doing that, sharing or stopped sharing it with your sponsor anyways. What is the importance of doing it, and what is the importance of sharing it with another person?
Thank you for that question, Justin. I'm just flipping over here in my big book to page, oops, page. I'm losing my page numbers here. 1 second, sorry. Pages are sticking together. 86. Here we go. So it says, when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. And for so long, I had deconstructively reviewed my day, beat myself up. This is what I could have done better, yada yada yada. Or I just didn't do it because it says when we retire at night. And so many times, I could get right in bed and fall asleep and not do this. But over doing this 3 years, eh, kind of religiously, because it is important to me, I have seen such great results in my life, such as having no secrets, feeling completely at peace and, happy and joyful, all the opposites of feeling restless, irritable, and discontent. Um, I'm happy, joyous, and free, as the book has said. But I would like to read just the questions because I know there are some that might not be familiar with the nightly review. It says, were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? And if you've been doing 10th step, then those things should be kind of relevant in your head because that's taking inventory. That's step 4. Um, do we owe an apology? Is the next question. That's our step 8 and 9. Have we harmed anyone? Do we need to make amends for anything? The next question is, have we kept something to ourselves, which should be discussed with another person at once? We can read that question as like secrets. Have you kept something that you should share with your sponsor, with another person? And that's step 5, admitting to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Were we kind and loving toward all? And that question really helps me to see, how was I inwardly, just as much as outwardly to someone? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? And that's steps 11 and 12. So why this is so important to me is it's helping me to work all of the steps every single day to the best of my ability. So, oh, and I forgot the last one down here is after making our review, we ask God's forgiveness, steps 6 and 7, and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. So every morning when I'm waking up, I'm thinking back on what those corrective measures that were. Could I have been more patient? Could I have been less perfectionistic in trying to control? So this helps me to, grow and enlarge my spiritual life every single day.
Thank you so much, Ashley. So, had a question come in about getting these recordings, and I just want to remind our live audience as well as our podcast audience, all of these recordings are released in podcast format and can be found. Well, you can go right to RECO12.com. That's RECO12.com and find it in there. You can also subscribe on any podcast platform by searching RECO12 Speaker Meeting, and you can find these recordings. There's 230 of them up now, so you can go through all of those, and this one will be posted this afternoon. Next question, we've got an anonymous member here in this meeting. Ashley, did you work your SAA and Al-Anon steps by working the big book? Is that how you went through the steps in both of those programs?
That is a great question. Yes. So I was in Sex Addicts Anonymous when I first came into recovery in July of 21. And I started working the steps with a sponsor through their text and could not stop relapsing. And my sponsor actually let me go. And that was one of the best things that could have ever happened because had she not let me go, all these other chain of events wouldn't have happened. So that's what helped me to find the big book. And the second sponsor that I had, I don't even remember what fellowship she was in, but I knew she was an alcoholic and a sex addict. And she took me through the book in a very short window in 18 days. And it was good, but I knew that I still had all of this stuff inside of me. I was still angry. I was still full of fear, all of the bedevilments, like the big book describes on page 52, feeling useless, not being able to make a living, things like that. And I just knew I needed something deeper, and I just had not been able to find it. And I was starting to feel hopeless. And finally, I found a sponsor, my third sponsor, who was turned me on to what's called Big Book Step Study. They're primarily Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, but there are still a ton of Big Book Step Study meetings that are for all addictions and different fellowships. So, at the end of this, I can put their website in the chat. So you can have access to those meetings. But it was there. I got a sponsor from that group and was able to go through the book and have a totally new experience, and to be able to experience like the promises and miracles in my life today, like I shared. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, and thank you. And if in the background you hear an engine rumbling, my neighbor just started working on a motorcycle next door, so we may have some background noise when I'm on off mute. So, but we'll do our best we can here. So Ashley, I've got a question here from Everly from our live audience. Everly says, "We agnostics really resonated with me, especially in the beginning of recovery." Ashley, and also me, Justin, which part of We Agnostics was really impactful for you? Did you have a part that really jumps out at you, Ashley?
Yes, I will flip to it right now. Okay. Well, there's several pages, but if I had to pick one, I'm just trying to find it. 1 second. Here we go. Page 54. It says, and it's the most random sentence in the entire chapter. "And then with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or a flower?" And I'm sure you're thinking, why is that so powerful? So my sponsor at the time was helping me to have a new conception of God, that I was not separate from God, that God is all around me. I just haven't been able to see it all this time. So, for example, I'm looking outside my window here. I see some gorgeous flowers that are starting to bloom. I see the grass, the tree, the sky. All of those things have spirit. They are from God, they're growing. And that same spirit that is in all of that creation is the same one that's one with me. And Bill kind of describes it like when the icy intellect melted away. That's kind of the experience that I had when I finally understood, like the book describes, like this is an inner resource. I was able to see in multiple parts in this chapter that there is no separation between God and me. But it all started with that sentence. And so that's why it was so powerful to me. And then once God revealed himself to me through that way, it was like I couldn't unsee it going through the rest of the big book. So I hope that answers that question.
Love it. Thank you for answering that, Ashley. And I already referenced the part that really just blew my mind in this, but I'm going to dive just a little bit deeper on that. It is in that paragraph that just talks about it's the second paragraph of the chapter, "To one who feels he is an atheist or agnostic," and then the person I was talking to at this time said, "or religionist." He added that in there, and I went, wait, just a minute, because when I first started becoming familiar with the big book, I thought, I'm a man of faith. I know what I believe, and I know what I know, and what I know is the only way, and everything else, and all of a sudden that just opened my eyes to a whole lot of things, and I now cross reference that to the second appendix in the big book, page 568. That it's the last quote of that by Herbert Spencer. "There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation." If my mind is already set with what I think I know, and what I think I know is absolutely true, I'm going to end up ignorant. I'm not going to learn anything, and I'm going to keep them. I will be kept in everlasting ignorance. And I don't want that. I want to keep growing. I want to keep learning. So setting aside those prejudices has been vital for me. All right, let's go to the next question here. This one's from Shalom. Shalom says, do you ever find that you keep picking up the old rocks and you need to redo that inventory?
Great question. Thank you. So that's kind of a two-parter. One, do I feel like I keep picking up the rocks? Uh, yes and no. Um, the big boulders, no, I'm not picking those up anymore. But some of the what I would call smaller ones, like Justin and I were talking about earlier, like the perfectionism, yes, that absolutely still shows up. And you know, if we read the seventh step, um, and I think these are why they're so misunderstood because they're short in the book, but really the entire program, it's arguable that the entire program is about step 6 and 7. It says, when ready, we say something. This is on page 76. When ready, we say something like this: My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. See, I'm not deciding what's good and bad. Um, God is. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. So there are still going to be some character defects that are going to hang around because for whatever reason, they're still serving others. And I don't know if this is right or not, but probably my perfectionism hangs around for one reason I could think of is with my job. I'm a project manager, so the details and being a perfectionist sometimes does help serve others. Um, that's what I think of. So there was a second part to that question I think that I missed. If you don't mind repeating it, Justin.
Yeah, let me scroll back to it. And do you feel that you constantly need to redo that inventory,
That's
readdress
it.
those character defects?
No. So I would not redo my inventory every single time that something came up. That's a perfect example of what a step 10 is for. Um, but if I notice, like, all of the bedevilments in my life are starting to come back up where I'm miserable and full of fear and unhappy, can't make a living, yeah, it's time to do some deeper inventory. This is a fact-facing, fact-finding process. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. So, and that's right from the big book on our step 4. So that would be the time to take a deeper inventory.
And Ashley, I want to thank you right now for another just mind blowing bit of knowledge that was given to me through you just now about the Step 7 prayer. I've shared in a few places about a year ago, I had this experience with the Step 3 prayer that just shifted everything in my whole life as to how I understood it. And I'd said that prayer a million times. Same with the Step 7 prayer. I say it every morning. It's the last thing I say before I get out of bed. The last phrase, grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding, is as I'm rolling out of bed and saying, okay, let's do this. But that phrase, my Creator, I would that you would have all of me, good and bad. It's not my decision what's good and bad. And whether it's good or bad, it's not mine anymore. It's God's. God has it. And that just, my mind just went boom. I don't get to make that choice as what's good or bad. It's God's choice. And what I think is good may not be good for me, but God knows. And that's good. Man, thank you so much. I'm going to be developing this over the next week or so as I think on that, because it just blew my mind. Is there anything else in that phrase or in that insight that I just had there that you would like to maybe expound on a little bit and help me understand it better?
Oh, I love it. You hit the nail on the head, Justin. See, before I even got on today, I just prayed, God, use this share as you will, at least help one person. So I'm glad to know that that at least resonated with you. Um, yeah. Oh, one more thing that I think some people miss in this prayer is, grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. So let's flip all the way. If you have your book, let's flip all the way back over to page 63, where the third step prayer is. Because if you look at the end of that where it says, may I do thy will always, there is no amen there. And so from page 63 all the way to page 76, this is the good old term, prayer and action. So there is the amen there at the end of the seventh step prayer on 76 because we have completed that body of work. There's still more work and steps to be done, but there's a huge chunk that you probably digested about yourself in working those pages.
Super cool. Super cool. Thank you so much, Ashley. Before we start wrapping up, do you have any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us?
Final words of wisdom. Well, I'll first say that I'm really grateful to be back. It's a totally different experience sharing now. But words of wisdom is to, if things aren't going well with your sponsor, you don't feel like you're growing, find a new sponsor. If you feel like the meetings that you're going to aren't working for you and not helping you grow, find a new meeting. Be open minded and willing to try something new because this is your recovery. You're not there to please your sponsor, to please the people that are sitting in the meetings with you. So do what's best for you. That's exactly what I did. I sought out the things that I felt were helping me. So thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. All right, before we close up here and move on to the prayers here, actually, I'm going to do that. Being that this is a new format, with us doing this in meeting rather than webinar format, I'm still getting the flow of things down and figuring things out. I've learned today, Ashley, this is one thing that I've learned from this, and I'll put it in this podcast, is I need to make the co-speaker or the speaker a co-host so that they can unmute themselves. And I've learned that now. So that goes on my checklist. I'm grateful that I continue to learn. I've been doing this podcast for almost 3 years now, and I get to keep learning from little basic things that are there. And that's how it is in life, not just in podcast. Thank you, Ashley, for opening my eyes more to the step 7 prayer and to dropping the rock. Thank you for being here for this fantastic RECO12 weekly speaker meeting. If anybody out there has additional questions that they have that they'd like to post, consider joining our WhatsApp community, putting that in there. We can go through and answer those questions with each other. If you have a question for us, if you'd like to contact Ashley, please send an email to RECO12pod@gmail.com. That's RECO12pod@gmail.com. And I'll get you connected there. And if you haven't already done this, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast on Apple Podcasts. It's a powerful way to help us share this message and to work step 12. Make sure to check out the Afro-Euro recordings that Karen A hosts on many Wednesdays. And next Friday, we're scheduled to hear from another return RECO12 speaker, Josephine A., who previously spoke to us in meeting number 162 with the topic of seeing God through another's eyes. Next week, her topic will be the choice, feeling alive or living the lie. And I'm excited to hear from her and her take on that really cool phrase. Anyways, thanks for being part of this transitioned way of doing RECO12. We will continue on this path and being a bit more interactive with future meetings. Stay tuned on the WhatsApp community and on the email list for more information on that. Now let's launch off into the rest of our day with a cool prayer from the book Drop the Rock, which Ashley will say for us.
Thank you so much, Justin. So this is on page 25 of Drop the Rock, and I feel like we can get really monotonous with the recovery prayers that we pray, so I wanted something new and fresh that I hope speaks to you like it did to me. God, give me the courage and strength to know who I really am, to act accordingly in my life, and to refrain from diverting my time, energy, and interest into my character defects. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ashley. Everybody, before we close out, I've just given you permission to unmute if you would choose to, and come off and just say thanks to Ashley and say hi.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
amazing.
much, Ashley.
Thank you, guys.
And you too,
Thank you
Justin.
both.
Very grateful for this.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Justin.
For all being here.
All right. Thank
Take
you
care,
so much for
everyone.
everybody for being here. There's one who has
Bye.
all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back. And when you do, come all the way in. Sit all the way down.
Thank
Let's
you.
trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
I've seen stars fall from above. I've fallen in and out of love. I've been high and I've been low. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. I've seen a boy become a man. He got lost without a plan. He's so far away from home. now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me, your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone, 'cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. I'm looking for the words to say. You make the world a better place, and I can call that place my home. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me, your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone, 'cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. So let me see just what you need to set you free, so we can be. I saw stars fall from above, I fell in and out of love. I got high and I fell low, but now I know that I just can't do this on my own. No, I just can't do this on my own. I just can't do this on my own.